What's going on, you guys? I know it's been a long time. I got caught up with school and everything, but now I'm on summer break, so we should be making a lot of videos. So today we're going to be installing a new Weiand intake. It's called a Street Warrior, and we're also going to be installing a Street Avenger Holley carburetor. So we're going to be collaborating with Holley, so that's really cool. So huge shout out to them for sending out the parts. So let's get to it. So pretty much up to this point, everything that has been done on my motor was done by the previous owner. So we have an Edelbrock 4-barrel carb, choke's not hooked up or anything. It was fun to take apart my car. I hadn't done a project since like maybe early fall of last year, so it was fun, you know, just to mess around, take apart stuff, you know. I guess you could say it's pretty relaxing sometimes, at least when it goes all right. I decided to drain the coolant because I didn't want to have the coolant spill into the motor when I took off the intake, so I did that as a precautionary measure. I was pretty worried about taking out the MSD ignition and making sure I marked it all up so that when I put it back in, the ignition would be correct. I feel like it will be slightly off because it was kind of hard to get it perfect, but I marked it all up, so we'll see how it goes when I start the car up. So one of my fears was taking out the old bolts and accidentally cracking them in the intake, and I was pretty good up until this point, and this one fitting would not budge. So then I put on a breaker bar and I was like, you know what, this is definitely gonna break it, but I don't care. And I was very gentle, and then I heard a big crack, and I'm pretty sure it broke in there. So I finally took off the old carb, took off the carb spacer. Very important to have one of those. Many people run into the issue of their motor not wanting to start after it's all hot, and the carb spacer helps that out. And it also gives you a bunch of horsepower, so and it's super cheap, so why not have one? So it was really awesome to take off the old intake. It was pretty easy. It was heavier than I expected. Maybe it was the angle that was taking it out on. I used a plastic scraper to take off the old gaskets and stuff, and it worked pretty well, mostly with the bigger chunks. But then I quickly realized I was gonna need something to take off all the small leftover residue. So what I used was really fine sandpaper, and it worked perfectly. Like it came out really nice, it looked pristine. And then after I did that, I went over with alcohol and I cleaned it all off. So then I decided to put gasket maker on the water ports, but I didn't put it on anything else besides that, just so it wouldn't move and just as an extra precautionary measure so that water or coolant wouldn't leak into the motor. I've been using Felpro gaskets on everything on my car, and they're honestly awesome. They're really high quality, so I definitely recommend using them. The kit comes with the cork gaskets that touches the middle of the intake. And from everything I've read, everyone says to not use them, and they slip out when you tighten down the intake. So I listened to that, so I'm crossing my fingers that they're not gonna leak, but I'll let you guys know how that goes in the next episode. So then I put down the new intake, and it looked beautiful. Like, I guess the issue was the old intake was painted black by the previous owner, so there wasn't much contrast. So with this, you know, non-painted aluminum, it totally stands out and looks awesome. So then I decided to put in a new thermostat and water gasket. And it turned out that the gasket was made for a slightly different year Mustang, but all I had to do was I made one of the holes a little bit bigger, and it worked fine. So as I was putting everything back together, I was just as gentle as possible. I did not want to break anything. Aluminum, it's soft metal, and you have to be careful with that stuff. So then I decided it was time to put on the new carb, and oh my goodness, it looks beautiful. It looks so much better. The Edelbrock carb was completely corroded and just gross. So that was awesome to put on. So then I decided to install a hard line on the side of the carb because I'm not a fan of using hoses, and you know, using a hard line is, you know, it's gonna last forever. But if you use a hose, these hoses do not last. Like, I go through them all the time. I don't know if it's how the gas is made or the material of the hose. However, I did decide to use some hose by where the fuel filter is and where it connects down to the fuel pump. So then it was time to put in new coolant. I put in a bunch, and I'll probably have to put in a little bit more after I run the motor. And then it was time to drain out the old oil. Supposedly you're always supposed to do this because, you know, if coolant goes into the motor, that's an issue. And when you take out the intake, there's a chance for the coolant to go into the block. I decided, you know, it's time to put in a new oil filter, new oil, because I haven't done that in a while. I always cover the gasket on top of the oil filter with oil. I've heard it makes a better seal and prevents oil from leaking. The oil I decided to use was 20 weight 50 from Valvoline. It's called VR1. It has high zinc. You know, I'm not die-hard with this company or whatever, but this is what I decided to use today. You really want your oil to have high zinc, especially with an older motor. The oil they make today is just not what it used to be, and it helps prevent wear on older motors, so I always do that. But yeah, look at this. The new intake and carburetor look awesome. Like, I'm so happy with how it looks. Now I really need to get new valve covers, maybe something gold. I think that would really make the car look sick. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. I have no complaints. So I just finished the install and I think it came out pretty well. There's nothing that was that hard or nothing broke, nothing went wrong. So I'm happy about that. I'm a little worried, like what happens if I start up the car and then it just coolant starts leaking out of it or something like that, like a gasket broke. So that's what I'm worried about. But other than that, it went pretty smooth. We're gonna do a part 2 of this video because I'm gonna tune the carb and I'm waiting on the throttle linkage and throttle springs and all that type of stuff. So I'm gonna save that for another video. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for that video, hopefully next couple of weeks, or hopefully sooner than that. But anyways, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys soon.